A wee while back, the National Railway Museum published a video tour of one of the items in their collection, the Simplex. Anthony Coles explains it far better than I ever could, even if I mostly parrot other people in these videos, but a Simplex is basically a shunting locomotive stripped down to its bare essentials. You have an engine, a drive mechanism, a radiator, and sometimes a roof, all mounted on a wee four-wheel chassis. Initially, Simplexes were built to be a stealth alternative to a steam locomotive on the narrow-gauge trench railways of World War I. What with a steam locomotive's tendencies to just sort of be a giant shoot-here beacon. It is now that we jump ahead in the story 14 years, to 1930. The Nederlandse Spoorwegen was comparatively light on shunting locomotives, relying mostly on locomotives they had inherited from their constituent companies upon amalgamation. Even then, most of these shunting locos were just four-wheel tank engines, 040s, like this NS 8100. In fact, the Nederlandse Listen, that is such a mouthful. I'm just going to call them NS from now on. Logic would dictate that I'm not talking about Norfolk and Southern. Y'all know what type of geography my videos usually cover. Wait, how did I go on this tangent? Right, the Dutch. The NS had only built 40 steam shunters between 1922 and 30. These were the NS 8700s, compact 060 tank engines, but they had the same shortcomings as any other steam locomotive. They needed to be manned around the clock to keep them fired, and they required two fuels to operate, coal and water. Coal was expensive, drivers were paid more if their engines returned to the depot with more coal in the bunker. For ease of operation, an internal combustion locomotive would greatly reduce costs, as one would simply walk up to an internal combustion loco, turn it on to do a job, and then put it away again without having to keep it running 24/7. And that is where this funny looking loco comes into the fray. This is NS 103, the first production member of a type of shunting engine collectively known as locomotors. Also notice how I said production member. The very first trial locomotives were delivered in 1927 and 1929, delivering a grand total of 20 and 30 horsepower. NS 103 and her 48 sister engines had a 50 horsepower engine, and all locomotors had the great benefit of being single-manned. A shunter could simply climb aboard and do his thing. The doing his thing involved a lot of getting off his locomotor, coupling or uncoupling, to get back on the engine for the next movement. And that is where the locomotor was perhaps even simpler to operate than a simplex. Demonstrated by this 1934 enlargement of the NS 100 design, the 200, the shunter didn't have to climb into the cab. They could stand on the board between the axle boxes and operate the locomotor from the side. That big bulky lever in the centre is the brake, but there were also two other braking systems available. Indeed, stopping a train after a shunt is more important than getting it moving in the first place. But yes, the NS 100 was so successful that they made an even more powerful version, which became far more widespread. Their widespread nature also gave rise to a commonly used nickname. The whistle of an NS 200 is mounted on their chimneys, so when revving and blowing the whistle, you get a sound like this. People thought the sound was reminiscent of a bleating goat, and so an NS200 became known as a sick in reference to a goatee. Due to the NS100 being a far more primitive design, they retroactively became the oorsick or primal sick. Now realistically, this is where this video gets a bit difficult. There's only so many ways I can describe that the NS locomotors were just really good at shoving wagons about. Luckily for me, they did more than just shunt. With their top speed of 60 km an hour, they became associated with permanent way trains and local branch line freights. Meaning a sick is just as big a part of the Dutch branch line scene as an 8100. The sick was left basically as it was through the next war, after which a few went missing. No prizes for guessing where they sodded off to. But even after the war, new NS200s would be built, eventually capping the NS200s at 169 members. They did lose some of their staying power though, when NS ordered a class of locomotive which needs no introduction. My British viewers will recognise this as a Class 11, though under NS they were the 500, 600 and 700s. Having a continuous power output of 261 kilowatts, eclipsing the 6 Meer 64, the Derby-built diesel shunters replaced both NS steam and diesel on station pilot, yard work, and hump shunting duties. But that didn't mean the SICK was suddenly an unwanted engine. They were very popular indeed on the second-hand market, where their ease of operation ensured their survival. The only major modification to the overall SICK design came in 1974, when 16 200s became crane-mounted. The crane can telescope to 6.5 metres, and can comfortably lift a ton. You can imagine how much they went for on the second-hand market. Really, the SICK was an unstoppable design, limited only by the work available. But, as with most great things, it was legislation what killed them off. The early 2000s saw an incident involving a SICK blamed on their lack of handrails on their running board. The addition of catwalk handrails signalled the beginning of the end. When in 2006 the Detmen's handle was no longer up to snuff, according to the Dutch Labour Inspectorate, NS pulled the plug. But that was still not the end for the SICK. 86 are still out there, 49 having found a home with a museum of some kind, 18 being static monuments around the Netherlands, 9 still on the books of private companies, and a further 10 privately owned. One even had some relative online virality, when preserve number 271 paired up with steam tram number 26 to save a stranded NS service train, the clip of which went a bit viral online, but I'm not going to show it here because who knows who's going to complain about owning the rights to it. A locomotive from the 1930s still in use today, owing to a robust design and the fact they can be driven by one shunter and not a dedicated driver. They've spread their wings far. One ended up in Switzerland in the 1970s, and another one can still be found in the UK on the East Kent Railway. There's few shunters who could match their feat, as these little engines, eclipsed by what came after, continue to accrue them.